Thank fuck, because I'm in exactly the same boat. I feel like I'm just
Yeah.
waiting for something and I don't know what it is. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Velocity, or at least my first guest. We are restarting this video cast. Velocity, we talk about the business of food, art, and drink. I'm very, very happy to have a dear friend and colleague. His name is Somanna Muthanna. He is the founder of the Soul Company, who are dedicated to storytelling, narrative, and food, drink, and the wonderful people behind it. I hope, Somanna, I've dealt Soul Company justice. Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, David. Finally, a reason to kind of look into a screen and talk to somebody and not hate the idea that I'm doing another video call. So thanks so much for giving me this nice little break in between all this chaos. Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you, man. It's a pleasure to have you. Just tell me, like, what's happening with you? How have you been? How's life?
Honestly, I shouldn't complain too much. I mean, April was obviously, I think, really rocky for all of us. A couple of the guys in the team and me were also down with COVID, and thankfully we all are like back up on our feet. But I think we've pretty much been a pandemic startup, right? I don't know what the term out there is, but I'm sure there must be a term for companies like us, and we've kind of had to reorient ourselves so many times over in the last 1 year. I think we've had to do another version of it this time around over the last month and a half. While we had some templates of what we did last year, and we kind of went back to that with the weekend delivery menus and a lot more at-home experiences. I think this time around, just because the brand is now out there and people know about it, we've also been working with corporates and in being able to help them out with customer delight experiences that we are kind of organizing for them. So that was a good bonus to have. I think shows us that we've kind of built the brand in a way that at least even when corporates are reaching out to us, they're reaching out asking for the kind of services at the level of quality that we would provide to our end consumers. So I think whatever the journey has been over the last 1 year, we've seen some fruits of that now, even in a tough time such as this. So yeah, can't complain.
It sounds intense, and like you're saying, you're a COVID or a pandemic startup. So you guys really started to kick off how many months before the first lockdown?
End of Jan and middle of March was when the lockdown started, right? So end of Jan was when we officially kind of started business. Obviously, research work had started towards the end of 2019, where we were meeting a lot of creators, meeting chefs and bartenders and artists, art gallery owners to kind of build out experiences which were primarily designed to be travel experiences and catered towards an inbound traveler coming into the country. And our idea was that how do we kind of give them a very different experience of India through the eyes of these creators, and where no experience is the same, right? So what you experience with David and what I experience with David will be very different. And that was always the concept. As far as the domestic consumer was concerned, the idea was that how do we kind of reinvent, the classic event space, right? How do we reinvent the F&B pop-up that comes to your city? And through that, we kind of envisaged customers coming back into the ecosystem, domestic consumers, and wanting to travel with us, right? And kind of wanting to see India differently. So that was the plan pre-pandemic. And yeah, once the pandemic hit, obviously, all the conversations we were having with travel companies across the globe and, even inbound travel companies in India kind of disappeared overnight. And they still aren't back on the table, right? And I think we're at least conservatively a year away from even starting those conversations again. So
wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, in the last 1 year, the focus has really become the domestic consumer. I think we've been fortunate in terms of finding an audience, which is, a lot of people kind of look at our services and our price points and say that, oh, you just have a lot of people ready to spend money. But I think the key thing is that it's not just money, it's also people who have traveled themselves who have experienced a certain kind of lifestyle and are seeking the same in their life here in India, right? And there is no age group to that because nowadays people are traveling and they're much younger. They're choosing to travel, they're choosing to experience things versus buying material things. So yeah, that's kind of been our journey, primarily fueled by food and beverage, travel experiences, events, and pop-ups.
Amazing. Now, one big question is that, I've been talking about this a lot. I think right now is the time of, or is the year of the great pivot, and I think a lot of us have to reevaluate our business models. And it sounds like, on the one hand, you've also had to do a lot of pivoting, but on the other hand, you hadn't really fully tested your product and your idea. So you were sort of still ideating and pivoting at the same time. How big is the gap between what you thought you would be doing and what you are doing now?
I think there are two ways of looking at it, right? Like one was what was the core vision of the company, and one was what we thought would be the core offering, right? I think the vision was that how do we get creators across culture onto one platform. I think that was our focus,
Sure.
right? Like while our objective was not necessarily to do stuff with or create experiences around Navi Luna, right? The idea was how do we create it around David. So we felt that there was a lot of power in the stories behind creators, whether it was in food and art, and, wildlife and beyond that. So I think the core vision has not changed. We are still a creator-focused brand. If you're doing a delivery menu also today, the chef is at the center of that story. If you're doing a cocktail event, it's the bartender story and not the alcohol brand story. If we do a project, we just kind of wrapped up this project with Roku Gin. It's the curator who was kind of putting the entire thing together, and the chef would kind of put the entire meal together, who are at the center of the entire story and not the brand itself. Right. So I think the core vision is pretty much intact. The core offering, yes. We were talking about day-long experiences with, creators, experience Bombay through the eyes of a chef, experience Delhi through the eyes of an artist. I think that is something that might take time to come back. We saw some of it happen towards the end of last year when people started doing road trips. It wasn't the first set of experiences that we had designed for the website, but we started seeing some momentum in people, wanting to go to Goa, or, we've done a few things with you and Mysore. We've done a few things in, Bombay and Delhi, where people wanted to just experience, food beyond just a meal and with a chef, and for it to be like a chef's table. So we've seen some of that happen, but I think the original offering was really kind of designed for a inbound traveler, and we'll need to wait for that. But I'm quite happy that we've kind of hit upon this understanding that we will not, steer too far away from the core vision, right? So even if there is a brand that we want to do something with, we need to be excited about the founders. We need to be excited about their story to want to do something. So that's still in place.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, it's nice that you've been able to get that continuity at least. And I think one of the things that I've sort of looked at with Soul Company and what you're doing is, like, on the one hand, like, it's very difficult because you were aiming maybe towards international travel and whatever. But on the other hand, you have a lot of chefs who are being forced to work from home. And I kind of laugh about that, because how does a chef work from home? But at the same time, there has been some kind of middle ground in terms of the cloud infrastructure. And it seems like you're kind of curating that. You're helping chefs build the back end, not the back end, rather the front end, in terms of like the advertising and the storytelling and stuff that like me personally, I do enjoy. But if I'm in kitchen mode, I want to be with my chopping board and my knife, and I do not want to pick up a phone or a camera. Seems like you're really filling a gap there. Do you think in some kind of way, like, this is the moment for chefs to become independent, creative people, and being able to kind of work away from restaurants and that kind of independent chef reality? I mean, do you think it is a viable option, or do you think that this is just really a bridge gap, and this is just a bridge until we get back to normality, and it's not really that sustainable for chefs?
I think it is a bridge back to normalcy for a lot of chefs out there, right? I think it's down to what their objectives are in terms of what they want to build, right? Do they want to build a brand around their cuisine, or they want to build a brand around themselves, or a combination of both, right? And I think that at some level, that thinking, I can see it change, right? I mean, in the last year, I've seen chefs who have left their restaurants and started off on their own. They're chefs who don't see the value of being tied down to a brick and mortar structure, not only because of what we've seen with the pandemic, but also because it really limits their ability to kind of express themselves, right? And they kind of get typecasted into one bucket. So what I feel is that there are going to be a small number of chefs who will be ready to take that plunge. I've seen it with a few already. Also, interestingly, because we didn't only work with commercial chefs, and we also worked with a lot of, home chefs, chefs who had been dabbling with food, had been doing pop-ups, but continue to kind of keep their day job. I think it's going to be interesting to see how some of them in the next year or so actually move into a traditional brick and mortar space, right? Because I think there are two ways of looking at it. A chef who's already in a brick and mortar space, saying that maybe if I step out and do something myself, build a brand around me, it will be interesting. And then chefs who have kind of been doing this from home, saying that listen, now I need a format which is a little bit more regular, which is a little bit more, structured in a way that consumers know when they can get food from me, and it's not like a weekend thing. Okay. I think we've been able to, at some level, play a part in both those layers of decision making. Chefs making this journey. I don't think at any level a chef can depend on Soul Company to kind of build out their delivery business, because like and you've seen, we don't tend to repeat a lot of chefs, and even if you repeat a chef, it's a completely different concept. It might be a month or 2 months later. But I think a lot of them have kind of come back to us and said that, hey, listen, I see a way forward now, right? And I see a way forward because I'm happy to have a certain niche audience. And as far as commercial chefs are concerned, they are now saying that there might be a world outside, a structure, a set of owners, and something that I can kind of maybe just kind of create from home. And then I have all this liberty of expression. So I think we'll see both, but largely we will see a lot of things return to normal. But I just to kind of round off the entire thing, I also feel that normal is going to be very different. And we saw some part of it towards the end of last year, right? I think chefs and businesses now have taken a step back and said that, are we sustainable, right? Are we sustainable from a business perspective? Those questions are being now seriously asked. So how much of this, chef-driven brand, how much, expansion for the sake of expansion are you going to see anymore? I think will kind of drop, which may not be bad for certain, chefs. And as a consumer also, we actually might start getting better overall product, right? Especially in a city like Bangalore, which I think is carved of truly world-class product in terms of a restaurant experience or a dining experience. I think some of these decisions or realizations, epiphanies will help.
It's so interesting you say that. I went to go just before the lockdown, and I went to a really rad restaurant in Panjim that I'd read about and really wanted to check it out. And was nice. It was quite similar to a lot of your newer but smaller Michelin star in that, you had an island kitchen. I started working, my first bar was an island bar. I love island bars and kitchens where you can kind of interact with the chef if they're free. And unfortunately, I was the only guest there. But, one thing, like thinking about the experience later, I was chatting to the chef because it was quiet. And I asked him about, what he's doing in terms of delivery and virtual restaurant, etc., as a supplementation to his restaurant, and also knowing that going into the monsoon, typically shuts down in the monsoon, etc., and usually one is paying rent 12 months of the year. So I was asking him, what are his plans for that, and he was like, I'm not really that keen. I haven't really thought about it. And I was chatting to a fellow colleague and chef in Bangalore, and I was like, this food was amazing, but this guy was like, his mentality was in 2019. And for me, I realized in that conversation that there's such a stark difference between, how I approached business as, in 2019 and how I approached it in 2020 and 2021 subsequently. And I do, I've been thinking a lot about Naval Ravikant, the founder of AngelList. He's an entrepreneur and a self-made guy and whatever. And he talked a lot about, point of distribution and how, traditionally we look at where all the money has been. If you're a sports player, you make a lot of money because that sporting event then gets broadcast to thousands, if not millions of people, and advertisers pay for those eyeballs. The same thing when you talk about music, for example, and these forms still have zero cost of reproduction. So for zero cost extra, you can reach that many more people. And we see that in today's world. And I just think that, like, thinking about what Naval said, it's like, hang on, I need to realize that, like, industrialism and an industrial business model where, I make chocolate and then I make 1 million bars of chocolate and that's my cost of reproduction and I spread it over that many customers. We have to use technology to get the same effects. And I do think that, like, even myself, I've had to transition from the industrial age into the digital age. And it's something I've been quite reluctant to do. I mean, I am sort of able to work with technology, but really my happy place is your sort of 19th, 20th century old machines and analog, etc. And I think this is a challenge. And also for culinary professionals, we're so tactile, we like things that we can touch and smell, etc. So naturally, we have a bit of an aversion. I'm definitely no Mark Zuckerberg. I don't plan on sitting in an office and typing out code. That's just not, who I am. And it's funny in Bangalore because every second person you meet in Bangalore is making some kind of app or, embedding a fucking tech into a bed mattress or whatever. And I have a good friend doing that. So no disrespect there. But I'm just trying to say, like, tech seems to find its way in everything in Bangalore, and I'm just looking for a tactile analog experience. At the same time, I also realize that I do think, whether we like it or not, as business operators, we have to pivot and we have to find better places or areas of reproduction. And the nice thing is that, media gives us the opportunity to do that. So maybe we serve what we do to a small audience, but then that can get, at least a digital format can go out in terms of, broadcasting or making a show or talking about it, whatever. But I definitely see a huge difference in my own thinking between 2019 and 2020 onwards. And I think that, like, a lot of chefs to survive are going to have to do this. I don't think there's really a choice. I'd be surprised if there is a choice, unless you want to go back into commodity and do, sort of very simple, your dosa idli, the things that have mass appeal anyway. I don't see really how people can survive otherwise. What do you think your role as Soul Company will be in that pivot? Say, for example, that I'm right and this is the case.
So I think one part of it that we are already seeing is today we are kind of structuring our own resources and time over the next 3 to 4 months significantly around consulting, right? What we are really doing is whether we're working with not chefs directly, but like F&B brands in terms of like bottled and packaged kind of products, and whether it's spirit brands. Eventually, we want to even be able to start talking to like boutique hotels and homestays, and really tell them that this is your new reality and how do you kind of become a part of it, right? And I think the new reality is twofold. One is, like you mentioned, most of our truths are going to change, and they already have. It's only a matter of how much of it we kind of buy into and how much of it we align our business into, how much of it we align our creation, like a creative abilities into also, right? Like, for instance, the one question I keep asking chefs and restaurant owners is, right from the advent of a Swiggy or Zomato, why haven't you, as a fine dining restaurant, not had a delivery specific menu? Like, I've not understood it from long before, right? Now suddenly it's something that kind of is becoming a question. But I felt like that was such an archaic way of looking at delivery, right? Which is why today there's a resistance against your Swiggy's and Zomato. So I feel like these kind of questions are the ones that
because people have not curated. Sorry, just to jump in there. Are you saying the resistance is because people have not created Swiggy and Zomato, also, let's say, delivery centric menus, and they haven't calculated their GPs and their costing accordingly? Is that the reason?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why they suddenly, when deliveries have become 100% of the business, like we saw for about a 6-month period last year, and now again, it's suddenly hitting them, right? And I think it's hitting them in two ways. One is, the bottom line, but I think also in terms of the positioning of the brand, because a meal that I pay 700 rupees or dish that I pay 700 rupees to go to a restaurant and have, it will never add up reaching my house, right? And as a consumer today, I'm educated enough to know that I pay 700 because I'm sitting in that restaurant, because the owner is paying, the rental for that real estate. And when I see that on a menu, I don't want to buy from them, right? And therefore, even when I choose to buy from them, they tend to lose money. And the fact that they're not seeing that, but they see the platform as the problem, right? I mean, the platform also has issues. Is problematic.
So scapegoating a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
That's
because
so interesting.
because till about a year ago, it didn't seem to be a problem, right? Till early 2020,
Right.
nobody seemed to have a problem with these platforms. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
the controversy around that aside. But I
No,
think
that's amazing. And no, I was going to say, the funny thing is about the pushback on the delivery services is global. I've seen it in South Africa. I've seen it in the UK, etc. Those, I mean, obviously the markets that I follow, places that I've lived. But it's global, right? And I also think, like you, I have a friend just outside of London, an ex-colleague who's running a very successful burger restaurant. He's pretty much closed his front of house restaurant. I think he had about 200 covers capacity, and he's running 3 cloud kitchens instead. And he's doing well. Like me, he's ex-teacher at Fridays, so American school, hardcore systems, at Fridays and Planet Hollywood, those brands, McDonald's, KFC, you learn systems. And I think we're naturally, with that kind of training, are naturally quite well sort of mentally set up for something like a cloud kitchen. But he's made the pivot. And I also think, like, for myself in FMCG, we give 25 to 35% margin directly to retailers. So in a sense, that's what restaurants are having to do now. And at the same time, they can, not have to pay all that staff. Let's talk about interior design. I mean, interior design is like a huge cost. In Bombay and Bangalore, for example, it can be 1 crore, 2 crores. That's 100, 200,000 pounds. You could have a much smaller front of house experience restaurant, say when things go up, but at the same time you can have much smaller satellite cloud kitchens, and they can even, Food Stars in the UK and US, which is Travis Kalanick, if I got his name right, one of the founders of Uber. They're creating a WeWork for chefs, etc. I'm sure it's going to come to Bangalore. It's just a matter of time. So you don't even have to maybe have permanent lease agreements.
Absolutely, yeah, and I feel like there are legacy brands that are not seeing this, right? And when I say legacy brands, these are brands that have kind of focused their entire positioning on their in-dining experience, right? And the ones who are able to kind of break that up into saying, when in-dining returns, this is the experience. It's going to be exclusive for a customer who walks in, and for the customer who wants to eat at home, I have a different menu. I have a different delivery system for it, because it might be coming out of a cloud kitchen, like you're saying. And then suddenly your platform partners suddenly start seeming a lot more valuable, right? Because technically, if you're a restaurant in central Bangalore today, there was no way anyone from an HSR or a JP Nagar was coming in, right? Today, Swiggy has introduced a 12-kilometer delivery radius. Suddenly, I'm getting food from restaurants I've heard about from friends in North Bangalore, which I would never have ordered from, right? So that's what these platforms always were. They were always discovery platforms. They were always platforms that would amplify your business, like an Amazon. And Amazon is for retail. And that's what you paid them for, right? And the unique thing is, and coming back to where we feel we fit in at some level, is one, I mean, in a personal capacity, like a debate and conversation I end up having every other day with someone in the industry. And I keep telling them that, when we talk about ordering direct, that was always an option. That never went out of the window, right? Swiggy came and changed the experience. They didn't aggregate the business. They changed the experience of delivery. The experience of delivery before that was a pamphlet that would be on your fridge, under a fridge magnet. You would pull that out. You would call that guy up. He would tell you in another hour's time he can bring the food and come, and he would have to be within a kilometer of your home. Otherwise, he would not deliver. That entire experience changed when Swiggy came. That's what I, as a consumer, pay for, right? The business, on the other hand, has to kind of figure out that today there is enough technology. There are brands like an Air Menus and Thrive, where you can list your entire assortment and your entire menu. It's a software as a service, so you're just paying a monthly fee. But do you have an audience that is going to order from you, right? And is your audience too small? But it's really bringing that larger audience, and that's what you're paying for. Or you pay for marketing and build your own audience for delivery, right? Which is performance marketing money, which is also expensive. So I think for us right now, not restaurants and chefs, but I think with a couple of FMCG brands, the conversation we are having with them is that are you looking at your market right? So if for instance, if you're a bacon jam brand based out of Bombay, and you have a huge market there, um, we believe that Bangalore as a market is far stronger for a product like that. And
Sure.
it's an instant kind of a hit for you because we are entrenched in the right set of customers. We believe in your product because as Soul Company, customers look at us as a discovery platform. So we are not going to talk about anyone or collaborate with anyone until unless we see that it's something that we want to talk about. Our collaboration
Okay.
and our marketing conversation around a product goes beyond the classic marketing agency conversation, right? We're able to connect them to an end consumer. So today, a classic advertising agency, if this brand was to go, or say Naviduna was to go to them, they would come up with classic marketing solutions, right? Like this is what you could do on social media, and this is what you could, this is where you should spend your money. But can they guarantee you an audience at the end of that
Three
funnel?
stories for
Yeah,
30K.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And and who's the audience at the end of that funnel, right? But here there is an audience. There is an actual transacting audience at the Soul Company, who kind of trusts us for our choices and the kind of brands that we work with. So I think that is one part of this entire confluence that we're going to be a part of and we want to be a part of, saying that this is a reality of what consumers in this country want now, right? And we have a small smidge of that entire pie of consumers, which will keep growing. Why not be smart and market to them? Because the consumer base that Soul Company has today, I believe, are your early adopters for anything that comes across in the F&B and lifestyle world. And if you
And can I
choose,
just interrupt? Is that your
sure,
value proposition to your customers? Is that why your customers come to Soul Company? Because they're looking for the new, interesting things? Are they sort of looking for you guys to kind of do the discovering for them?
absolutely, yeah. I mean, a lot of them literally, when you look at a lot of our private dining and bespoke experiences that we do, it's customers just reaching out to us and saying, "This is the occasion, this is the date. I know you'll figure out someone and something and a setup that I cannot think about." Right. So one is that, and the other thing is when we do our weekend
Wow.
menus, every weekend we have customers saying, "How do you find these people?" And I think it's just because we've made it our job to find these people. And
Amazing. Yeah, you have.
yeah, yeah. So I think, yeah, I mean, then when you kind of cross-reference that back to brands and tell them that, listen, you can do the same with consumers, right? Like we've had a lot of brands come and
Yeah.
tell us that, where are these consumers? We've never seen these consumers before, right? Because I think even brands, like when especially look at spirit brands, and you work with a lot, right? And I think when they kind of look at the younger audience in this country, they're kind of shocked at times that, listen, they're ready to spend a lot more. It's not like the early 2000s where your journey always used to begin with, beer and rum, and then you would go into whiskey and that's it, right? I think now with craft
Yeah.
gin, craft rum, craft beer, uh, your early 20s, mid 20s are open to anything as an experience. So are you kind of building your offering, your marketing for these people? And we have the people, so why not experiment and try with them?
No, I think it's fantastic. And one thing that I realized, like one of my challenges is that I tend to, throw myself at everything. And one of the things that I've had to do as I mature as an entrepreneur is to really do less and say, what are the core competencies that I have? What are the things that I can do that no one else can? And just because I can do something doesn't mean I should. And I think that's just natural for a lot of entrepreneurs. Chef entrepreneurs, chocopreneurs, bar entrepreneurs, people who are sort of becoming business owners, but they've come from a craft or a profession, like myself. I think there's definitely a challenge. And I've started to see the value in working with organizations who want to focus on something, like the curating that you're saying, for example, or the discovery or the storytelling, so that we don't have to. I mean, we will always have to tell our own story, but it definitely takes the pressure off us. And I mean, one of the things that I notice works for us in terms of finding new customers is every time there's an article in a newspaper, a little interview or a press release or something like this. And we've never worked with an agency that does that. I know agencies do it, but we get customers coming out of the woodwork. We're like you said, like, where do these people come from? At the same time,
Yeah.
though, who reads newspapers? And definitely our target demographic less and less. I mean, I haven't read a newspaper in, I think, 10 years. So, and just because I haven't done doesn't mean other people don't do it. But nonetheless, media is changing, platforms are changing. Social media is where people are at the end of the day, by and large. So I think it's really, really important that, organizations like Soul Company come up and they do the work for us, so that we can focus on making, great products and delivering great service. Yeah. It's definitely awesome. So what's your background and how did you get this job?
So my background doesn't organically lead to me starting the Soul Company for sure. But like I studied marketing, so I started in tech like most people out of my B school at that point in time. And as you know, I did my MBA in Mysore under the ages of Chamundi. And but I think yeah, my first job was in a tech company. I was in marketing out there. You would think from the outside that it is a classic job that you want to escape the moment you get into it. But I think I had like a great boss there. I think she kind of laid the foundations for everything that I kind of know about, consumers and how to think about marketing to some extent, how to take a step back from bad looking decisions. And from there, I moved into retail with this company called Chumbak. I was fairly young at that point in time in 2014 when I joined them. I was the first marketing resource. The one thing that was common between my time in Chennai when I was working with tech company on a salary that could barely buy me a roof, I think at that point in time, all my money used to still go for food, right? And not food for the sake of food, but like really kind of finding these experiences in the city. I would have friends from Bangalore come to Chennai and say, what can you get in Chennai? And I'll be like, let me show you Chennai, right? So I think I was doing Soul Company experiences long before it was there. Once I moved to Bangalore, moved to Chumbak, it kind of became a part of work also to an extent, because Chumbak being a social media heavy brand, I think that's where I learned my social media for the sake of kind of understanding it and understanding how you build an authentic brand through social media, right? So that was always the objective there. After I spent some time I was there for about 5 years. I spent some time at a fairly early age lifestyle co-living brand called Stayboard. Again, extremely young. I think they were just about a year old. Built out the brand for them, built out the initial marketing team. That was around the time I started doing research for the Soul Company. Over the years, a couple of people across the country that I'd gotten to know across PR and tech through my job with Chumbak and the one before that, and kind of reconnected with these people. For me, it was always when I would go and have a meal, whether it was in India or outside India, I would always try and get an audience with the chef, right? Like that used to be my key goal. They were my celebrities.
You were that guy.
Right? Yeah, I was that guy. I was that really annoying guy, constantly messaging, saying, like once I have a reservation also, can I meet the chef? Can I meet the chef? Can I meet the chef? So I think that was like a part of me. And I also felt that when I traveled the world, always would come back feeling that the experience of traveling India and the experience of discovering India is broken unless there is an explorer in you. And if there isn't an explorer in you, then you shouldn't have to suffer, because it's a great country to discover, right? Like, all the way from the cities to the smaller cities, to the towns, the villages, the places middle of nowhere. But you have to have an explorer in you to be able to do that. And that's not fair on the ones who don't have the time, who don't have the, the patience for it. So I think that was another pain point that was always there. So I feel the only thing that was common throughout my years before the Soul Company was this quest for food whenever I would travel, and coffee. And very recently, just before I met you also, chocolate. So that was something that happened just before that. But I think the key part was just the marketing and branding background allowed me to really understand consumers and people in a very different way, which is why I think some of that has translated into how we as a company operate with creators. Maybe consumers don't see it in a certain way, because everyone asks you this question, right? Are you a consumer first brand? And I'm like, you don't need to be a consumer first brand to be successful, right? But there has to be something at the core of it. And for us, the people that are at the core of the business are the creators, right? And how do we constantly create interesting stuff for them to want to collaborate with us. So that's pretty much been my journey. Yeah, and I've somehow managed to get here. Yeah.
Amazing. And tell me about the transition from being a marketing man at Chambok to then becoming an entrepreneur and dealing with the pressures of small business.
I think for the first 6 months, a couple of our, we have a couple of angel investors and advisors from the outside, and a couple of chefs that I've worked with. They've come back and told me, like, I think till maybe even June of last year, right? I keep getting this that you're still thinking like a marketing guy, right? And I guess, traditionally, as a marketing guy, you're basically constantly at loggerheads with everyone else in the company, right? Because you never have enough money.
Right.
You're not getting the right amount of attention from all the departments. Your CEO is always focused on sales and not marketing. Most of the time looks at both of the things the same way. The usual gripes. And that's the same picture I was painting as an entrepreneur. That was the same lens through which I was looking at the business, right? That let's do that cool thing. Let's build that, little feature for a consumer. Let's get 100 great consumers versus getting 1,000 consumers and figuring out what to do with it. And I think I know what the inflection point was, but at some point towards the middle of last year was when I think I realized this whole just basically progress before perfection, right? And I think that's for me has been my mantra since then. And I know we've had conversations on also, like you mentioned, distractions, right? How many things do you want to put your fingers into? And that's where I think the team has come and become like a great resource, right? Bringing in people who really kind of understand the brand and business. So I think that has been, and now I actually miss the marketing guy in me, right? Because sometimes I feel like it's not there because now I'm just like,
the magic.
Yeah, now it's just like heavy, like where's the moolah coming in from? Where are the next set of consumers coming in from? Which I don't mind actually. I think now there are people in the company for me to kind of ask the marketing questions too. We've built a fairly picky brand, so I'm not too concerned about that. But I think the approach now for us is let's try this, let's test this, and let's scale this. So I think that entrepreneur mindset is slowly pretty much dawning upon me. Yeah.
It's so interesting. And, talking about where's the moolah coming from and that constant, because one has burn rate, and especially when you're establishing product market fit and building a client base, then obviously you have your break-even point on a per monthly basis, and that maybe I've got 6 months of runway, and it becomes really sad. I think for me, like one of the challenges, like losing the romance in a way. It's like, hang on the one hand, I need to keep this thing alive and I need to grasp for oxygen. And I hate to use a sort of horrible COVID metaphor, but it feels like that as an entrepreneur. And at the same time, like the reason why I did this was because of all this other stuff, this romance, this love for me, chocolate, for example, or mixed drinks or whatever. And so, I think back about like my friends who became professional skateboarders. I was never good enough as a skateboarder to get, sponsored or whatever. And then the sad thing was that the friends who were good enough ended up having to be told when to skate, what to do, and where, because companies had invested in photographers or whatever. So obviously they need their ROI. And, these friends of mine didn't have to work in a restaurant and clean dishes like I did. But at the same time, they lost the love for skateboarding, to a degree. And I think a lot of them go through this period and then they come to terms with the fact that, hey, at least I'm getting paid to skate or do something that I enjoy. So, and, I was thinking the same thing with myself. It's like, well, I could be doing something else and compromising in other ways. At least this is an agreeable compromise to some degree. But I mean, it is definitely, I personally think, really quite hard to keep the magic alive, keep the romance alive when you're in a long-term relationship with your passion. Crazy times. Yeah, man. How's your team? How are you guys coping with 35 days? I believe you've been under lockdown in Karnataka. I know you guys also have been sick. You've had some sick people on the team, whatever. How are you guys coping? How are you keeping morale going?
I think like before the lockdown, we we were working out of a WeWork. We would pretty much spend the entire day at work together. We would be ending up with drinks in the evening or meal somewhere. Uh, it was pretty much everything we were doing, right? Like all of life was that. Meeting family, and in my case, a wife was a bonus outside of work, because even a meal or a drink was work technically for us. So I think
Yeah.
the biggest hit for us has been like last year when the pandemic happened, it was just me. I had another colleague, but the the breadth of work was very limited, and it was manageable
Mm.
from home. Right? It was really all the work I had to do was the work I had to do. There was no dependence on anyone else. I think this year
Right.
I now understand what people were talking about last year about working from home and why it was a nightmare, right? Because I think for me last year, uh, work from home was during the week. On weekends, we had these delivery menus. I was out for that. It felt fairly okay, right? And a lot of our work was logistics. Um, I think that
Yeah.
part has been a little tough on us. Obviously, the middle of April was an extremely confusing time with a couple of us getting sick. Um, but I think from the beginning of May, we um, one, we started doing these classic daily calls. I think that's been there's pretty much a call in the morning, and there's another one that ends up happening in the evening, which is a little bit more impromptu. But the morning one is a mandatory one. Um, what
Okay.
I like about the call, and like what we've done with it, is we allow for a little bit of this fun and conversation to happen there, right? I think after the first few days, I was like, are we wasting about 15, 20 minutes after the bulk of the conversation has happened in just talking nonsense? And I'm like, this is required, right? Like, we get our inspiration from talking
Yeah.
about, food that we've discovered, a show that we're watching, and we're like, oh, we like that concept. Can we ask a chef to create something like that? It has to happen because it was normal and
Yeah.
organic before. Uh, Also, a couple of guys in the team are fairly young. They're living by themselves. Honestly, I mean, you live by yourself, and I think like sanity starts becoming a question mark after a while, right? It's not easy when you're plugged in from like 9:30, 10 in the morning till endlessly after that, right? Like even when you are on a call on work for about a few minutes, you'll talk about something else, but then you're back to work. Um, this is not normal,
Yeah.
and it's surely not healthy. It's surely not how our minds were
Yeah.
designed, and I think just these little interventions have helped. But I can't say that
Yeah.
this is an ideal state of work at all. Right? I don't think it's the business is moving along. I can't complain. We've seen new opportunities come up just because we've been able to take a step back and look at who we are, which I which
That's
I
interesting.
which I think is good. Like I can't complain about that, right? Like a classic example is like all of March we were just sitting and planning this one huge event that we were going to have in April. On the 23rd of April, there was a chef coming down. It was a three night kind of a thing. And I in April when like I was down with COVID, I was bedridden. I was just sitting and talking to my colleague, and I was like, we spent 2 weeks planning that. And in 1 week of me getting sick, everyone being stuck at home, we've actually clocked the same amount of business by just taking a step back and saying, listen, let's go after these guys. Also, obviously, survival instinct kicking in. And then in the period after that, as for the month after that, we realized that shit, we would never have done or thought about these things that we're doing right now, right? Like consulting, for instance. We would never have gotten there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
For those things, I'm, ticking off as, small mercies.
I mean, that's great. And, like, that's nothing new. We see Google and a lot of the Silicon Valley based companies exploring with playtime. They've already tapped into the psychological factors that, when we play, we tend to work not with the prefrontal cortex and the problem solving part of the brain, but with other parts of the mind, the more creative parts, which tend to get to solutions better. And I think about this too. It's like, well, hang on, this military, and I know you come from an army family, but this like militant kind of structured masculine way of doing things, task, 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 often leads us into sort of mental and psychological roadblocks. So, is the best thing to do
Yeah.
just to like slow down and step back. And
Yeah.
yeah, and at the same time, to your stakeholders, not look like, you're wasting time, whatever. I mean, I also have that problem. We have some clients who are like putting the pressure on us, and I understand where they're coming from. But it's also like, as you said earlier, you don't have your full team, or you don't have those face-to-face meetings. So everything, even if you're doing the same work, it's 50% more energy. now under the current circumstances. I mean, we're down to 25% of our workforce. And it's not that like there's that much work to do, but it's just that all the jobs that there are just take much more time because you're also switching you don't have those people around you. So the brain switch that has to happen to go from strategy to content, then back to sales, or product development. It's like fucking, it takes a lot more energy changing gears. Really, like, what do you think? When do you think we go back to normal? When does Bangalore go back to normal? Normalish.
I mean, for the world that we inhabit, I think I don't see it before September, October. I think it all kind of comes down to how quickly everyone gets vaccinated. Because I think right now what's going to happen in the F&B world is, and these are just assumptions, right? I mean, even last year, restaurants opened in Bangalore by about, I think, end of August, early September. We didn't see people walking until about November, right? Because there was obviously the fear.
Right.
This time the fear is very different. Last time the fear was psychological. This time the fear is physiological, right? Like you've seen it happen around you. It's happened to you. And I feel that there are going to be questions on, I'm vaccinated, but are you vaccinated? So am I safe to step on? Is just being vaccinated enough? Are the service staff vaccinated, for instance, at a restaurant? I think if all those questions start creeping in, while we might see some sense of normalcy creep in from September with potentially restaurants opening, or it could even be as early as August for that matter, but I don't see people walking in until unless they feel fairly confident about the fact that people around them are safe. And I think that as a barrier makes things difficult. On the other hand, what I feel not necessarily hopeful about, because I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but last year what we realized was that we very quickly saw people just get fed up, because I mean, that's just who we are, right? It's hard. It's hard doing this.
Totally.
And no matter how much of pain you see around you, and all of us have personally felt now, I think, I don't know anyone who doesn't know someone that has, been significantly been affected by this wave. But still, I mean, you're still talking about wanting to step out and being able to do something normal. So I feel the way travel kind of picked up last year, especially with road trips, I think that will again happen faster than people returning back to restaurants. So there is a sense of being in a bubble out there. Also, unlike last year, Karnataka has been hit much worse this year, but states like Maharashtra and all are in a much better place. But
they weren't initially.
They weren't initially, yeah. I mean, I think they'll kind of step out of things much faster than Karnataka will. But I think my general fears around, because I mean, now I'm officially in a way a part of the industry, the F&B industry. I think that will take time.
Yeah, it's quite worrying. I'm guessing December is when people have the confidence to kind of step out. Although, it's definitely, there's going to be a reaction to the madness of not being able to have a social life. And definitely those of us living alone, it's fucking not fun. It's really not fun. But anyway, crazy. Somanna, I want to thank you for your time. This has been a great chat. The train is running behind me. I don't know if it's coming through on the mic. But good to hear your thoughts, to see your face, and to hear a little bit more about what's been going on with you guys and your thought process. Before I close, tell me what is a feather menu, a light menu?
Air menu.
Tell me, what is an air menu? I need to know. I need to be in the know.
So Air Menus is a company. They're a software as a service platform where restaurants can go and set up their menus. People can order, and they are already integrated with Dunzo. So when your food is ready, a Dunzo gets automatically scheduled, which you already paid for at the time of your order.
Okay.
They are technically your response to restaurants who want to go direct, right? Because they're just a platform. You just put up that link on your Instagram bio or wherever you're promoting. We are using it for a slightly different purpose. We are, over the last few weeks, we've had a lot of our customers say that, listen, you do these weekend menus, but we're working from home and we need stuff during the week also. The weekend collaborations you guys do are great, but isn't there something that you can put together? We trust your curation. While we are working, we need like a good lunch. So why don't you do something around that? Also, at the same time, we were kind of talking to the entrepreneurs organization in Bangalore on a project that they were working on to kind of put together this 100-bed hospital where they're kind of converting the school into a 100-bed hospital with every bed equipped with oxygen. So we're working with them to kind of help them, raise whatever money we can through this platform. So every order that goes through Air Menus, a percentage of the money is going to this fundraise. And customers are now getting a Monday to Friday option of Soul Company's curation, right? So we work with 3 to 4 chefs. We ask them to put together 1 or 2 lunch meals, which we kind of work with them on, which won't be a part of their menu or is put together from a couple of elements of their menu, something that we like to eat there. And people can buy for the next day, right? So if you book before 7 p.m. today, you get it the next day for lunch.
Yeah.
And it's a great platform. I mean, I should be promoting Soul Company, but I also feel like I should promote Air Menus. They built a really, they built a really great platform. I think for every restaurant owner there who's very confident of having a customer base of their own, I feel like it's a platform that they should be on, and from a cost perspective also, it's fairly straightforward. It's just a monthly platform cost that you pay, which I think pretty much any restaurant can kind of afford. So that's what we've been doing on Air Menus.
Okay, so Soul Company Air Menu offering on the weekends.
Weekdays.
Pick up and delivery with Dunzo. Weekdays.
Weekdays, yeah. It's only weekday lunches. So the weekends are still
weekday
reserved.
Lunches.
Yeah, so weekends are still reserved for the collaborations we do, which are the one-off, a chef just doing 20 portions or something. This is to really solve for the work from home crowd, right? For their weekday lunch, and let's give you an option that is, if you were to do a Soul Company lunch while you're at work at home, what would you do? Log on to Air Menus.
So good. I wish we had the same thing in Mysore. I'm so tired of making lunch every day. Oh my God. Yeah, but I don't miss your Bangalore weather. It's fine. Amazing. Somanna, thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy to chat with you and to see you. I hope to see you in person over a cocktail very, very soon.
Yes, man.
I don't see your drink, but I won't ask.
Yeah, I'm 1 week out of my first shot, so I've been told by doctors to just hold on the alcohol for a bit. So I am
okay.
I'm in spirit there with you. So yeah.
Virtual drinking, amazing. So thank you so much. Good to see you. I'm going to touch base with you soon to see what you're up to next, and I'm just looking forward to seeing more great things, more great stories, more great curatorships, and more posts. You guys have got such fantastic communication on social media, and it's definitely something that I always look forward to seeing popping up on my feed.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for creating this podcast, vidcast. I think the industry needed it, and it's always been entertaining to meet some of the folks that you find interesting. And I feel very, proud that you found me interesting for this. So I'm glad we could convert one of our conversations into one of this. So yeah, look forward to this, reaching people. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, happy days. Happy days for sure. More good conversations on the way. And yeah, man, definitely hope to see you for a meal very soon. Until then, see you later.
See you, man. Thanks so much.